Sup. Today I want to share my honest thoughts about Destiny Rising, which if you didn't know is a brand new mobile game currently in a closed alpha stage, developed not by Bungie but rather by NetEase, a company which, if you weren't aware, is also known for games like Once Human, Dead by Daylight Mobile, Diablo Immortal, and more. I was lucky enough to be given a closed alpha code and spent a bunch of time both streaming the game as well as grinding it offline just to see how I'd wind up feeling about it as a whole. In addition to sharing my early thoughts on how I feel about Destiny Rising, I'll also try to answer the question, is this game for you, or do I recommend people play this game, however you want to put it. Anyway, I'm going to divide this video up into part 1, the good, part 2, the bad, and part 3, final thoughts, starting with the good. Even though this is a mobile game, which IMO are usually a coin flip between sorta fun and mostly awful, I found myself being more interested in Destiny Rising overall than I expected. That interest is being absolutely hard carried almost entirely by one major pillar of the game, but we'll get to that shortly. The visuals are, of course, nowhere near the quality you'd find in Destiny 2, but that being said, it did have the same fun, mysterious atmosphere that Destiny players have come to expect and enjoy. The gameplay quality on my Google Pixel 9 was alright, pretty decent quality. You can also play via an emulator, i.e. something along the lines of BlueStacks, which apparently not against the TOS, which I was kind of shocked by. I wound up playing on my phone for a while before getting on the BlueStacks train, and the visual quality when I finally hopped over, dear lord, way sharper, way smoother. I apologize in advance for all the pre-BlueStacks footage you're gonna see from me today, but hey, that's how the game was meant to be played at its core, so why the hell not? If you're not into the idea of playing Destiny on a touchscreen, and who would blame you, you can always play Destiny Rising on your phone via a Bluetooth gaming controller, which again is what I did for a while when I started. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, at first it was incredibly sluggish and weird, and my gameplay kind of looked like someone handed their controller over to their blind, drunk, one-armed dog. That being said, I did get better over time, and it's nice that you have that option as opposed to just 100% touchscreen. The game's combat is pretty straightforward with both a mixture of gunplay and ability play. So far, the abilities are mostly different from what we have in Destiny 2. There are classic abilities on certain characters like Ikora Rey that you'll find very familiar, including an ability reminiscent of the Child of the Old Gods Void aspect from D2, and the classic Nova Bomb Super. Other abilities though are straight up new, including all the stuff on the first Guardian you unlock, Wolf, a solar hunter with a really strong kit. Granted, his super is just kind of an alternate universe Dawnblade Warlock attack, but still. More on Wolf and the overall playable roster later on. The gameplay appeal of completing missions, grinding out currency, and unlocking new Lightbearers is surprisingly more hooking than I thought it would be. The missions feel like shrunken down D2 missions in an alternate universe. There's obviously a big dark cloud hovering over the whole loop of unlocking new characters in this game, but we'll save that for the next section of this vid. The final major talking point under the good umbrella I want to go over right now will potentially include what I'm going to call maybe spoilers. And the reason I say maybe is that remember, none of this game's story is canon, aka official to the storyline of Destiny as we know it. Destiny Rising not only takes place in the past, aka way before the events of even D1, but also in an alternate timeline. Basically, the entire game is in the same vein as the Marvel What If series, as far as I'm aware. So, as I give you spoilers in this next section, some of them may be spoilers in terms of this event or footnote may only happen in this particular timeline of Destiny Rising, or they might be taken as actual spoilers in terms of here's a character from the official Destiny lore that we've never seen before, this is what they may talk or sound like, and if you want to keep that forever a mystery, then definitely do not play this game. And with that weird half spoiler warning out of the way, why don't we talk about the lore. Remember I mentioned earlier that one part of this game is hard carrying my interest in a major way? It's the lore. Yes, this is an alternate universe, but Destiny Rising offers several interesting experiences and moments for those who are familiar with the world and story of Destiny. I'm actually really interested in talking with Bife about so much of what is going on in Destiny Rising because I genuinely am interested in talking about each character as well as diving into all the little Easter eggs and tidbits in the game. If you don't want to hear what I'm about to say about certain Easter eggs or interesting lore tidbits in this game, then please skip ahead to the time indicated on your screen. Gonna give you a few seconds to pause the video if you don't want to hear this, just being patient. And okay, good enough. All right, in only a few hours of playing Destiny Rising, all of the following happens. You experience the first ever hive sighting by any known Lightbearer. Oh, what's...
Strange. Outlandish.
What's that? Don't worry about that. You experience the first ever interaction with Xur as he mentions how the Nine has noticed humanity. You experience the first ever encounter with anyone of Oryx's family tree, including both one of his daughters and Crota, who, by the way, speaks to us in the game directly, like with words and voice acting. You meet a young drifter before he was known as the Drifter and was laying low on Earth under one of his known aliases. You meet a young child-aged speaker. You meet the original Iron Lord Radagast, who, by the way, has a small floating pet Ahamkara. You meet and can play as Kaber, one of the Guardians who took an infamous L as being one of the first fire teams to enter and get wrecked in the Vault of Glass raid. And again, that's just in the first 2 or 3 hours of playing. I have no doubts that the full release of Destiny Rising, as well as any future updates to the game, have the potential to be packed with interesting lore gems that certain players will be extremely tempted to either see or learn about. In an ironic twist, these hidden lore gems, while exciting for a veteran player of the franchise like me, might be completely lost on folks who are brand new to the world of Destiny. Basically, where I look at Kaber and think, yo, it's the Guardian from the Vault of Glass lore. A new Destiny Rising player who has touched none of the other Destiny games might look at Kaber and think, yo, who's this goofy asshole? And even though that hidden gem factor will be lost on completely new players though, Destiny Rising actually does a pretty decent job of pulling you into the world and explaining what's going on. I definitely felt way more in the loop in the opening storytelling of Destiny Rising than I did years ago with D1. In short, if there's one crowd of people I can actually give a, hey, you may enjoy trying this game out recommendation to, it's the people out there who really enjoy or care about the lore of Destiny as a whole. It's basically a whole new world out there. I'm learning about new characters, old characters, new locations. I'm eating it all up because, truth be told, I really do just enjoy the overall world of Destiny. Wrapping up this section on the good, I'll say that some activities in Destiny Rising are actually pretty fun. Xur's activity is a neat little deck building challenge, which reminded me a lot of the deep dive roguelike back in Season of the Deep from D2. You have to complete challenges, aka kill many enemies, but before each new round, you get to pick a unique buff to power up your character. I kind of liked it. There's also a PvPvE activity called Shifting Gates that I can only really describe as a more condensed, wackier version of Gambit. You got 6 teams of 3, all on a gauntlet where you have to collect and dunk moats, but you can also bump into other teams and straight up murder them. Honestly, I may do more of that. I did think it was kind of fun. Oh, and there is actual PvP in Destiny Rising, by the way. I haven't touched it yet, though, because it seems to only be available on certain days and times of the week, kinda like Trials of Osiris in D2. I'm sure it won't be pretty, but I do plan on giving that a try. Final thing for the good category right now, good with an asterisk, I'll say. Apparently, not only will this game have raids or raid-like activities, but also have day 1 raid races, which I think is a good idea because day 1 raid races are some of the most fun times in Destiny. However, apparently Destiny Rising already had some form of a raid race and told literally nobody about it beforehand. And good lord, talk about dropping the ball. I mean, look, I get that finding secrets on your own in Destiny is half the fun, but not telling your own community about the first ever Destiny Rising raid-like activity until it's already over is a bit too wacky for me, IMO. The hell are we even doing out here? All right, now why don't we move on to part 2, the bad. And we'll start with the incredibly obvious 800-pound gorilla in the room. This is a gacha game, which if you don't know what that means, pay to win. There's currently an ad for something in the game called the Dazzle Murray membership, horrible name by the way, where TLDR you can pay real money to both increase the amount of materials you get from certain activities as well as improve your loot drop rate for certain items by 50%. I'ma be clear, I'm annoyed that Destiny Rising includes elements of pay to win, and I really wish that particular design philosophy of the video game industry would just go crawl into a corner and wither away. This is a mobile game though, and as we rapidly approach the year 2025, it has become all too painfully clear this has become par for the course for the vast majority of mobile games out there. I'd actually be more shocked if I met any gamer, mobile enjoyer or not, who was not aware by now that the landscape of mobile gaming is just continually riddled with pay-to-win mechanics. After all, if companies are making any kind of profit at all by adding this into their games, and players are still not only playing, but paying as well, albeit through gritted teeth maybe, then companies are going to keep including pay-to-win mechanics in their mobile games. I don't yet know how far you can advance in Destiny Rising without spending any real-life currency at all, but I will keep you posted, as that is a question I'm really interested in finding out the answer to. And even though I'd imagine that 99% of all modern age gamers are aware of what goes on in the mobile gaming industry, I'll still go ahead and say the following. If you aren't okay with the moral concept of playing a game that includes elements of pay to win on any scale, I would recommend not touching Destiny Rising. If you're confident that you're not the type of individual who can be coaxed into dropping real money into a game in order to give you better odds at pulling a slot machine lever as you try to unlock the latest hot goth mommy you wish could ruin your life, or if you're just fully aware that this is how things are in 2024 and you have disposable income / simply don't care, then yeah, feel free to try out Destiny Rising. Although if you do feel that way, I'm sure you didn't need me to tell you that. Again, I want to go on the record that blatant pay-to-win mechanics will likely always piss me off for existing, and I personally never spend money on them, but we're all adults, so you make up your mind for yourself and I'll make up my mind for myself. Unlocking unique playable characters is also frustrating by design because, again, it's a gacha mobile game. Want the latest and greatest awesome new character? Hope you like slot machines. Pull that lever and cross your fingers. Again, the game's in alpha right now, but I can only imagine that like every other gacha game out there in the full release, you'll probably be able to pump IRL money into the game to get more lever pulls for more chances at getting the more rare characters. Certainly not my cup of tea, but you do you. Moving right along, we come to a quick one that's only temporarily in the bad category, but I'm gonna mention it anyway, and that is the use of AI vocal recording for some of the in-game dialogue. I say some because there are moments in the game where you're having a conversation with a character who is very clearly voiced by a real-life person, and then in the middle of the conversation, it'll change over into a god-awful AI robot voice, which is both extremely noticeable and takes me out of the moment each and every time.
Disappear. That is the Lord's wish. Beyond that is none of my concern.
The power of a wish is never given for free, and a price is always exacted. I only hope that all this was worth it.
Thankfully, NetEase already released a statement about that on Discord, which I'm glad to say is what I thought was going on. Basically, some of the lines are AI because, again, the game's only in alpha and they haven't finished all the vocal recording yet, so the AI lines are just placeholders until the full release of the game. And man, thank God, because that shit is really annoying and weird and distracting. Next up on the bad list, if you're a real stickler for quality and you want to play on an emulator, getting that all set up straight up sucks. BlueStacks wasn't exactly easy to navigate. There are multiple versions and you got to download the right one, and then when you get that up and running, it straight up wouldn't let me play with a controller like before, and I spent a bunch of time troubleshooting that with a bunch of tech-savvy people from my community, but to no avail. I therefore decided I'd end up playing mouse and keyboard, which is fine, and then that was even more of a nightmare to set up. Which, I get it, it's a game that was meant to be played on touchpad, and here I am trying to set up M&K settings through an emulator, not exactly designed to be easy, but Jesus, after all that work and effort to get this set up on an emulator on your PC, might as well be a PC game at that point, but I digress. Moving on, this one I'm only a little bummed about, but I could definitely see a lot of veteran players avoiding the game completely because of it, but yeah, you can't really make your own Guardian the way you can in D2. As mentioned earlier, your first character is a freshly revived new light named Wolf. You can customize how they look and sound, which is nice, but when you enter a name, that's only kinda your in-game character name, as Wolf decides that they just wish to be known as Wolf. And while I genuinely do like Wolf, I do not feel attached to him in the same way that I do to my D2 Guardian. Again, some people will care about that, others won't. Here's one feature that's really limiting. You can't completely customize the loadout of your playable characters. When I say that, I mean that playable characters are completely locked into playing a certain subclass element and using certain weapon types. For example, Ikora can only play using void abilities and can only equip both a grenade launcher and a rocket launcher. That does make it interesting in a way, i.e. you have to bring the right character to the right activity depending on the enemy shield types and whatnot, but it does feel extremely odd and very opposite of what we've come to know Destiny as, where you finally unlock a really cool looking new weapon, only to learn that you can't equip that weapon on your favorite character because they literally can't equip that particular weapon type. There's another big downside that I know some of my fellow D1 and especially D2 players will understand, and the only way I can think to describe that criticism is, why the fuck isn't this in Destiny 2? For example, one thing that stands out pretty hard is a freaking ping system, which FYI, many D2 players have been asking for quite a while. It's in the Destiny Rising Alpha Day 1, GG. Also, and I'm not making this up, apparently Destiny Rising is getting some form of SRL. I know many of you won't care, that's fine, but I genuinely really loved SRL back in the day and unironically have been asking for it to come back forever, and yeah, it's apparently going to be a thing in Rising. A part of me is glad we're getting it in some way, shape, or form, but come on, I'd much rather have it in D2 than a mobile game. You also have some really interesting weapon perks and completely new exotics in Rising, and even though you know it's a completely separate game altogether, you can't help but wonder how they'd perform in D2 and then be kind of sad that you might never really know. I know comparing D2 and Rising is like comparing apples and oranges, but it doesn't make the cut sting any less. Who knows, maybe Bungie and NetEase can inspire one another with their ideas and both games can grow and bounce off each other, but maybe that's just me being hopeful. All right, part 3, final thoughts. I'll keep it short. I feel like only two kinds of people are gonna hop onto Destiny Rising. Those who are really interested in the additional alt universe lore and people who are just really into gacha games in general. I might turn it on once in a blue moon only for the former, as I'm definitely not interested in the latter and don't plan on dropping any coin on this game. I'm not gonna yuck other players' yum though. If you're into gachas, you know what this is and you can go ahead and make up your own mind. Just be smart about it and responsible. That's all I ask. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.